Did any of you notice, if you were looking over the story about what happened in Oregon yesterday after this group left the wildlife refuge and they were headed to a public meeting? You've got a number of people who've been arrested when the government provided their home addresses where they were from. Ammon Bundy is listed as being from Emmett, Idaho. I was unaware that his family had moved or that he had moved. I had been under the impression for a long, long time. Obviously, he grew up in Nevada, where his father happens to live, but I didn't know. Perhaps the family owns land there. Somebody may be able to help me out with that. 907, Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 24. And the telephone number, if you'd like to reach the show, 736-0300. That's 736-0300. And you're up next. You're on the air.
I'd be interested to know if anyone out there follows Santelli's, because he has a live feed, and I heard that the live feed was cut right before the shooting went down. And if anyone was actually watching it, because it's gone.
I thought
it's
so.
It's probably gone to never be seen again.
But he was arrested in Burns, so he was nowhere near, obviously, the shooting, and apparently wasn't on his way to the meeting.
What I heard was that he was talking with them whenever it went down. So, I don't know.
Somebody was monitoring his feed then. Somebody was monitoring the feed, and then the plug got pulled.
Yep.
That does not surprise me at all. And again, First Amendment trampling in this situation, and all of the people. Thank you for the call. All of the people out there who are celebrating the fact that that this is almost over. Remember, there are still. They didn't get everyone. There are still some people who are out at the refuge. I guess they'll go in now and they'll do what happened in Philadelphia back in 1985. They'll come in with a low-level bomb and drop it on the buildings and burn them down. Some of you who are old enough may remember a Philadelphia mayor by the name of Wilson Goode. Wilson Goode went in with a heavy ammunition against a group that had occupied a city block. Well, occupying it, they were living there. But there were people in the city who didn't like them, and there were allegations that they were living in poor conditions. And turns out he was a black mayor. These were black activists. They all went by the last name of Africa. And what he did, the group was called MOVE. In order to remove MOVE, he went in with a plane, and they brought the plane in low, and they dropped an incendiary device. The thought was it would just create smoke. Instead, it burned down several buildings and killed most of the people there. He was a Democrat. Well, Philadelphia gives that away, right? He was a Democrat. Here's the thing. Would what we happened to see yesterday, would this have happened under a President Cruz, for instance? Or would he have just told federal agents, wait it out? Because Mr. Obama didn't have a lot to say about this situation. My guess is his fellow travelers and media rarely ever asked him about it. Their assumption was he was probably all, hell-bent for leather, going to go out and make sure that he got these guys, as I said earlier, because they're bitter clingers, according to his definition of how people live between the two coasts where most of his support happens to be. I asked that question because we brought up the case earlier, 1992, Ruby Ridge. That was a Republican serving as president during that era, George H.W. Bush. And it was Waco, which you had a Democrat. So you don't really see any difference. It doesn't seem to matter who's in the White House. The bureaucrats who run most of these federal organizations with all of their high-powered weaponry, that's the other part of this. Caller earlier in the show said, Fish and Wildlife is not the BLM. It isn't. But the Hydra was one animal. It just had many, many different tentacles, right? This is the unholy trinity of government. You've got all of these different arms, but it's all tied to one particular force. Did you know that the Department of Education has its own SWAT team? If you're not sending your children to school, the SWAT team may come out, knock down your doors, and go after you. That's a true story. It happened to a guy in Oakland, California a couple of years ago. And, in fact, it turned out he wasn't breaking any laws. He had another reason that the kids weren't going to school. They still came storming in and were ready to shoot the place up. 23 right now, 9/11. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. The government has the hard power. You may not always see it, but they have it, and they have it at the ready for use. I think we have a caller with us on this line. Are you with us, caller? Good morning. We have silence. Marcel Marceau calling in this morning and checking on the program. You're up next. You're on the air on Top Story on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. You say that this is almost over. I think this is a good point where you're seeing the heavy hand of the government. If what we hear is true, and again, I will come to conclusion, they shot first, the government did. Here we go again. It's another wake.
Your call's breaking up on me. Can you call back and try to get a better connection? Just that there's some dropouts in the call. I got most of that, but some of the important things you may be saying we might miss. Well, is it over? That's a good question, because you're going to have a lot of people, as the media calls them, on the extreme right, who are going to be looking at LaVoy Finicum as a martyr. And I brought this up in the last couple of weeks, I think on a couple of occasions. 1916, the Easter Rising in Ireland. It happened in Dublin. The British came in and they arrested all of the Irish revolutionaries. And if they had just left it at that, in fact, when they marched the revolutionaries through the streets, the Irish people spat upon these men who were looking to give them their own liberation. And they would have gone to prison and just rotted there, except the English decided to start shooting them. And when that happened, the Irish people suddenly said, whoa, wait a minute here. Maybe these revolutionaries are right. And that kicked off a prolonged war and then a civil war that followed it, which really didn't end until just a few years ago. 9:13, you're up next. You're on KLIX with Bill Colley.
Is this better, Bill?
Sounds better, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Like I said, you say this is coming to an end, and I don't think so. Because if the reports are true, and I don't want to jump to conclusions, but if the government shot first, here we go again with the heavy-handedness of the government. And this is all about how the heavy-handed of the government what came in. It's only going to make it worse. And as far as your thing about Ted Cruz, I believe in my heart of hearts, if Ted Cruz was president, he would have sent a representative or showed up himself to talk to these people to see what needs to be done.
He may well have. I thank you. I think he might have been the only member of that Republican group who would do that. Folks, all of you Trump fans out there, I have a feeling Trump would go in and try to crush these people. I'm sorry, you may not like that, but I don't think Donald Trump would see this as an affront to Donald Trump. And that's where I'm not National Review here, but that's where I may have some worries about the man. Glad he brings a lot of things to the forefront. But there are just some people out there who would make me a little nervous in some of these situations. Telephone number to reach our show today, 736-0300, 736-0300. It's 26 at 9:15. You're up next. You're on air on Top Story.
Bill, during the Jimmy Carter presidency, the farmers down in Georgia protested for some of his tactics, and they took their tractors up and to Washington, D.C. and circled the White House in order to get the attention of the mainstream media. Maybe these farmers and ranchers should take their tractors to different state capitals, circle the capital so that the mainstream media will wake up.
Thanks for the call. I have a friend, actually, who he was an old Mennonite farmer, and he was a neighbor of mine for a while, way back. And he used to come up with all sorts of great ideas, and he used to say, we were living only a couple of hours from Washington at the time, but he used to say, take your tractors, and he said, take your automobiles, go over there, and he said, drive around that National Mall at 5 miles per hour. He said, you will get their attention so fast because you will snarl everything in the seat of government. 9:16 now. We have another caller joining us. You're up next on KLIX and News Radio 1310.com.
That last caller just made me chuckle. So what if instead of going to the capitals and whatnot, what if all the cattle trucks showed up at the local television stations, just parked everything in their parking lot? They can't ignore it then because it's right in their front yard.
True.
These people are idiots. They won't cover anything that doesn't relate to them or doesn't fit their agenda, so you just bring it to their doorstep.
And thank you for the call. I'd take a manure spreader in probably, and maybe you could unload it in their parking lots and let them know what we happen to think in those situations. you'd hear the media screaming and hollering about how just awful this was, and these knuckle-dragging right-wingers and these dangerous Caucasians and these people with their notions of liberty. We've got to bring that to an end. I mean, otherwise, how is Emperor Obama and his gang, how are they going to take over our country and put their blueprint down for us and control everyone out there? Because, gee golly gosh, you need to be controlled. I've said it before. For all of the people who bellyache about ranchers, and bellyache, well, they grazed here, they shouldn't graze there, this is everybody's land. When did it become everybody's land? It became everybody's land when President Theodore Roosevelt seized it by fiat. That is, as if he was a divine right ruler under something called the Antiquities Act, I believe it was. It was some obscure act, and he did that. I'm sorry. We are talking about productive Americans here. My head, if you took a little measurement of it, you wrapped a tape around it, and you said, all right, how big is your head? Is about the same size as the heads of everyone in Washington, and so is yours, which means that your brain, on average, is about the same size. There is somehow a notion that they're better people, they have better interests at heart than we do, and that they know better how to run the government. Well, I'm sorry. If they feel that we're a bunch of evil people, it must be because they have evil in their own blood. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Go ahead.
Good morning, Bill. I just want everybody to remember in all of this, with this individual being killed and whatnot, is none of this would have happened if the Hammonds hadn't been unjustly prosecuted for something that they'd already served time for, already been sentenced by a judge, served their time, and that wasn't good enough for the BLM, so they worked with the Justice Department to rig a deal against them, and now they're serving even more time for something that they already served time for. And so you can disagree with the ranchers, whatever you want to do, but that is a crime that was committed, and none of this would have happened if we weren't in this situation.
I thank you. Thank you very much for the telephone call. I'm surprised. Even I've got the Fox News monitor on here. Well, Fox, they try to build an image as being the right-of-center news network, but that's not really the case. I think we all know that. And I just get the feeling when I look at all of these things that they don't really, no one's going to press this issue, and it should be pressed. 9:19, we've got to take a short break in just a moment. I do want to tell you about our friends at Tint Lady. Tint Lady can do a free estimate for windows at your home, your office, or even your automobile, and do paint protection as well. And these window tints can actually help protect against those ultraviolet rays from the sun that will bleach many fabrics, maybe even your old photographs you have on walls in your home. We'd like to recommend you get that free estimate by giving a call today, 736-8469, or go online, tintladyidaho.com. Locally owned and operated, been in business now almost a quarter century in Twin Falls at 1887 Highland Avenue. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And, of course, Sunday, they're closed, but Saturday by appointment. And remember, don't squint. Get tint. We've got more on the way in just a moment. More of your calls on this subject. Speaking of Fox 2 as well, maybe a thought or two about Donald Trump giving them the stiff arm. Checking my my various emails this morning, and love this line. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. And I will not mention the name, just saw that at the tail end. And then the same writer sends a second email that says, since when are the FBI present during a routine traffic stop? And did they have a tail light out or a blinker light out or something? Because these guys knew what they were facing in this particular situation. I read a couple of things this morning as I was getting ready for the program, and I want to share this with you. You've got the filmmaker who investigated Planned Parenthood, which is cutting up babies and selling parts, walks away. He gets indicted for a crime because he uncovered that. And then you just look around at all of the other things going on in this country. Coach Kennedy, I saw an interview with him. He was the football coach from over, was it Bellingham or somewhere in Washington State, who got fired for praying after football games at the 50-yard line. And then you've got these guys, these ranchers being shot on the open road. Of course, there's no media around out there on the open road at the time. And any media that might have an inkling of what's going on, as the caller told us, got its plug pulled. What type of land are we living in any longer? And people wonder why the voting public is so gosh darn angry. 925, Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 28, and you're up next. You're on air.
Good morning. Hey, you just make a little comparison between the agenda of Occupy Wall Street, where the government stepped out of their way to make sure that Occupy Wall Street could break the law, and compare with Baltimore, where the mayor of the city said, oh, call the cops back so they can have fun and destroy stuff. And these guys are out there doing nothing, just trying to make a point, and that didn't fit their agenda, so they kill them now.
Liberal government and its allies in liberal media pretty much cover for those other groups. But these are, according to the media folks and to your leaders who call them bitter clingers, are apparently people who deserve it, right?
That's right. It's just a matter of what fits the Obama agenda, and I'll tell you, not a thing happened to any of those people in Baltimore or Occupy Wall Street. But now we got dead people in Oregon just because they were trying to save a couple of ranchers from staying in prison.
Thanks for the call, sir. Great point. People are not going to like this, but I'll tell you what. This country was built by white Christians, primarily white Christian men. Now, you're going to have people out there say, well, yeah, but some slave labor was involved. Yes, in certain regions it was. But the country itself, as it expanded west, was built by white Christians. And being a white Christian in this country today, it's like walking around with a mark on your forehead. And I guess some people interpret it as, shoot me. 927, Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story. And another caller joining us on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Welcome.
Yes, sir, Mr. Colley. All of your listeners should be on their phones right now to our state and federal representatives calling, and in all the other states that are listening should be calling and demanding why the federal government was there in the first place. If the Oregon State police couldn't take care of it, their governor called in the federal people. She should be impeached or thrown out. According to the Constitution, she's not acting for the people. She is the head of the state police in Oregon.
She's a moral degenerate. I mean, what more do we expect out of her?
But the people, they won't stand up and call their legislatures, even here in Idaho. I've sent in 3 emails this morning to our federal legislatures, and I expect some kind of a patented letter come back. That's what they usually do. Like Simpson, he's always got the same thing like everybody else. He don't know how to write his own return letter.
Well, I thank you for the call. I know how those letters go. I received a few of them in my life. Dear constituent, we here at the Capitol are working very hard for you, and we take your concerns, whatever they may be, very seriously. And remember me at election time, and if I see you at the grocery store while I'm pumping hands greeting people, I will tell you that I take your generic concerns seriously. Please vote for me. Your concerns are always important to me. Please feel to write to me when I'm not on some junket outside the country at your expense. But I'm working very hard when I'm out of the country. In fact, several of my colleagues and I are going to a Crimean resort, a beach resort, and we're going to spend 3 weeks there studying Russian tourism, so that we can apply the principles they use to whatever we may be lacking. But don't worry, we're going to suffer in the hot sun on that beach so that you can have a better life. That's what you get when you contact these people. Look, folks, don't expect anything, Republican or Democrat, from any of these people on these issues. You know, they're all comfortable. They'll tell you what you want to hear, but that's about the extent of it. And look how they're pushing back this year on the national front against people they don't like. I'll tell you what, we think we're winning this battle right now. Nah, they've not even played most of their cards. 9:30, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Speaking of which, some noise on that political front coming up.